Hello everyone, I'm Christopher and I love to garden. One of my favorite things is trying new vegetables or building things that are experimental like this trellis. Or this year, building raised beds. We've brought the garden out now to the biggest footprint that we wanted. So now we're trying to grow up instead of grow in the ground because here in Oshkosh in Zone 5A we've got pretty dense clay soil. So by having raised beds it allows me to amend the soil with things like perlite and peat moss, and I'm having much better success growing things like my root vegetables. So, by popular demand, I figured I can take you through and show you how I did it. Come on, let's go. Timber! It all began with a nice load of wood. Building these 8 garden beds took a lot of lumber, and since I wanted them to be 12 feet long, in order to haul that in my car, I either had to get 6-foot boards and do a lot of assembly, or I could order 12-foot boards from a local supplier. And I ended up calling, and I found someone who thought my story of the garden beds was cool, and they delivered it for free. So there are good people out there. The whole process here is very simple. I have 4 beds that are 12 feet long by 3 feet wide, like the one that I have in front of me here. The other ones are 12 feet long by 1 feet wide, and 2 of them are 6 feet long by 1 feet wide. First, I cut the shorter boards, the 3-foot and the 1-footers. And the 12-foots, I didn't have to cut them at all, which was terrific. And I'm using a method that I first saw on Patrick's 1 Yard Revolution channel to build these. So I don't have any corner posts that I'm anchoring into or mid supports. I'm just screwing the ends of the 12-foot boards into the, very ends of the 3-foot boards or the other short boards. And then here I'm putting on a 2x4 cap. Oh, by the way, the big boards are 2x10s. The 2x4 cap is really useful. Not only does it provide a wide ledge that I can sit on when I'm working in the garden bed, but it also keeps the 2x10s underneath from bowing too much. And after I measure the internal diagonals like I am there to make sure it's square, I end up driving 4-inch screws into both the short piece and the long piece, and that essentially locks them in. It anchors them so they're not going to move and go out of square after they're filled, which is really nice. This entire project is terrific if you're one of those kind of people that loves limited tools projects. For everything that I built here, all I used was a jigsaw to make cuts, a straight edge and a tape measure to measure and make my lines, a drill so that I didn't split the wood, and a driver to drive home my screws. Now, ultimately, I ended up buying a little bit more lumber than I needed, which is good. I used that extra lumber and some scrap boards that I had weathering outside from previous projects. I broke them down to appropriate lengths, and I screwed them underneath the 2x4 caps on top. This did a couple things. It added some more structural rigidity. Since the 2x4 was flush with the outside, it hung over, an 1.5 inches or so on the inside. So screwing in these spare pieces of wood, it made it so the 2x4 cap didn't rotate on in and fall, and it gave me a really nice, stable surface to sit on in the future. So you're probably wondering, how the heck am I going to fill all these? Well, I didn't pay for any dirt. What I did, I'm mixing a couple different techniques. I have some old driftwood that was in my yard from the previous owner 6 years ago still, and it's slowly been rotting. So I put those larger pieces on the insides of the beds, and then I simply dug up the soil that was around it and put it on in there. I did half layer straight up soil, and then the top half was soil mixed with perlite and mulch and other things to loosen it up and amend the beds so that I can better grow things like beets and carrots and other root vegetables that otherwise wouldn't grow in my clay. Now, one of the things that I'm really looking forward to, I'm hoping, is the fact with this wood in here, I've read that roots tend to like to grow around that for the plants that I'm planting because it's great for moisture retention. And also I'm thinking it's going to be a good internal habitat for other decomposing microbes. Really looking forward to seeing how that affects my garden in the future. Because of these raised beds, we were able to plant our garden so much sooner than we ever have before, right after our last frost date at the very beginning of May. And I know in subsequent years we'll be able to plant our cold weather seeds even sooner by utilizing things like cold frames and low tunnels. I'm excited to use a no-till method, things like chop and drop for our beds in the future. See how that is for gardening. It's going to be a new experience for me. I've only ever gardened in clay. My whole family has. So it's a world of opportunity, and it's all thanks to having raised beds in this section of our garden. And there you go. I intend to get at least 10 years out of these raised beds. Had we made them with cedar, that lifetime would have been a little bit longer. And likewise, had we used some metal sheeting or plastic, that probably would have extended the life as well. But I'm satisfied with what I had. So if you're reusing materials or you have a budget that you're working within, framing timber like this is a good option, and I wouldn't shy away from it. You see we've got the trenches here in between all of the beds. This is going to be filled in with 6 to 9 inches worth of mulch, so they're not really going to be sitting in a lot of water. That's going to hopefully pool along the sides, which will, again, increase the expected life cycle of these raised beds. So, what did I forget? What would you have done differently? Leave a respectful comment in the comments below, and let's have a great discussion on it. And if you'd like to share your raised beds, by all means, send pictures to my email address that's in the comments below. I'd be happy to make a follow-up video to this, showcasing what you're all doing. That way we can collectively increase the gardening know-how on YouTube, and it'll be fun at the same time. So if you're new, I hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. That definitely helps out, and it's fun. And until next time, happy gardening. Bye.